All right, we're going to start now. And if someone is late, they'll just jump in as we go. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to this third day of the Rethinking Economics Festival. If you already attended sessions throughout the festival, we hope they gave you new insights into what we hope economics has in store for the future, and that you already have food for thought. We also hope that this session here about zero waste circular economy will add a layer to this thing that you have to think about. So for this first session of this third day, we're going to look at the limitations of the current linear system and explore the potential of resource management and zero waste solutions for climate mitigation. So first of all, a quick round of introduction. My name is Lena. I am French, but I am part of the Rethinking Economics group in Uppsala, Sweden, where I study. With me today is Eric, who is my technical assistant. Hi, Eric. And he's part of the Rethinking Economics group of Warwick in England. Today in the tech team, we also have Lawrence, who is part of the Rethinking Economics staff and who immensely contributed to putting this festival together. So thank you, Lawrence. And we also have, of course, our amazing speaker, Mariel Vilella. So Mariel is currently driving the global work of Zero Waste Europe as Director of Global Strategy. She is also guiding Gaia's work on zero waste project guidelines for major sources of climate finance and international energy policy. So thank you so much for being here, Mariel. Regarding the format of the session, so Mariel is going to give a short presentation of about 20 minutes, after which we'll open the floor to questions. About the questions, you can write them in the Q&A box, which you'll find in the bar at the bottom of your screen. In the Q&A, we'll also encourage you to engage with each other's questions, share resources. You can also use the chat to share resources. In the Q&A box, you can also upvote other people's questions to tell us which question you'd most like to see answered. And a bit about the house rules. We fully recognize that not everyone here is an expert, and so we encourage you to ask us questions of all levels. We'll take everything safe space. All right, without further ado, Mariel, if you'd like to start your presentation.
Thank you so much, Lena. I'm going to share my screen. Yes, here we are. All right. Thank you so much to the whole team in Rethinking Economics for organizing this amazing festival and for giving us the opportunity to share our vision about zero waste circular economy. Thank you to all the attendees here today. It's really impressive to see so many people from all over the world. And as this presentation is talking about zero waste circular economy, but from a very global point of view, and trying to also give an overview of all the work that we're doing in Zero Waste Europe and Gaia, I hope that's going to be interesting, relevant elements for your context. So I'm looking forward very much to your comments and questions and any feedback that you have on how what I'm going to explain relates to your work and your reality or where you are. So today, we're going to talk about circular economy, but I'm going to start first talking a bit about me and the network. So yes, I'm Mariel Vilella, Director of Global Strategy with Zero Waste Europe. I started working with Gaia 10 years ago, but before I have a background on environmental and social justice activism, working on food sovereignty issues and environmental communications research and various publications and films making. In the last 10 years, I've been working on waste issues at first from a climate point of view, but also later on developing the network in Europe, in the Zero Waste Europe network. And right now I'm back to the international work. So yeah, I'm gonna give you an overview of the network, and I'm gonna explain these the international network. Let me start. So first, oops. Oh, really? Oh, I'm very sorry about that. So Gaia is the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives. This is a global network of grassroots groups, NGOs, individuals working together for a just zero waste world without burning, without dumping of waste, and replacing that with zero waste solutions. So this is the global network. And it was formed in the year 2000 in South Africa. Now it's an alliance that's grown with 900 member organizations in more than 90 countries. And our theory of change, what we believe in, is in inclusive bottom-up strategies that are grounded on the principles of environmental and social justice. Zero Waste Europe was the branch of Gaia that has been active from 2010, but eventually was around 2014, 2015, it was formalized as a network in Europe. It has a basis in Brussels. It has around 31 NGOs in 25 countries in the European Union, but also outside the European Union. And our aim is, as well, as we share with Gaia, eliminating waste from our society. And you can see here in the map roughly where some of the members are. I'm not sure that this map is completely updated, but I think it gives you an idea that our network is very spread out. In our work, we have three main strategies of action. In the first place, supporting NGOs, local groups, and communities. This is very much at the heart of our theory of change, as we believe that change has to start, and it can be more effective from the bottom up, starting at the local level. And this is where, you know, in our network, really are member-led, and our members really have a say on the work that we're doing. Then our focus, where we are intervening, is in changing the European policies. So we take these experiences from the bottom, from the local level, and bring them up to the European level to influence the policies and make them as ambitious as possible, and especially opening up spaces so that the people so that there's a better participation in the development of the policies at the European level. And finally, with the cities, this is another level of work where we have developed, and I explain a bit more later, we have developed this network of zero waste cities where all this vision about zero waste, we see it in practice, we see it how it works, and the network of NGOs are supporting, giving advice and monitoring as well all these cities that are implementing these practices. So focusing at the city level to really make all this vision a reality. Yeah, so our thinking about waste is a lot more than just the very mechanical, technical dealing with waste. We see waste basically as an entry point for the transformation of our society. We see that waste is a system. It's a system. It's a symptom of this system that is failing. It tells us that waste is what's wrong really with our consumer society, and it's an opportunity. It's in dealing with waste, we really have access to dealing with a lot of other imbalances in our society, because waste in the end is the result of a lot of political decisions, a lot of power relationships that have to do with politics, with economics, with gender, with the environment, with health. So really dealing with waste is kind of just a first step towards dealing with a lot more with the system in itself. And zero waste in itself for us is a goal. So it's what we aim for, and it's also a process, because of course this is what we aim for, but it's not going to happen in one day. It's a process, it's a commitment, it's the whole strategy and a big set of practical tools that seek to eliminate this waste, so that step by step we change everything we can, so that in the end we have a system in which everything we produce or consume goes back to nature and goes back to society. And this is the link to circular economies. So for us, and you know, out there's going to be different definitions of circular economy, but for us, definitely what we see in circular economy is that zero waste is really, the vision of zero waste is at the heart of a circular economy. We come from a linear economy where we have the take, make, use waste, this kind of what's really the root causes of the exploitation of nature and power imbalances in our world. And we have a recycling economy as well, in which we take part of these materials that have been used and bring them back into the production manufacturing system, but we still have a significant wastage, a significant leakage from this circle. In a circular economy, nothing is wasted, nothing leaks, and everything is used, repaired, reused, and we really manage to have a closed loop. Again, this is a vision, this is a goal, and for us what's important is the commitment to go in that direction is something that as well, if you think of it, there's going to be a lot of different ways to address what's needed to achieve a circular economy, to achieve a zero waste circular economy. So I'm going to explain a bit later on how does it look in practice. But first I want to explain a bit more about how all of this links to climate change. Waste and climate change, how do they fit together? So if we look at the IPCC report, at the accounting inventories of greenhouse gas emissions of countries, basically we will see that by sectors, waste appears to be a sector that does not contribute that much to climate change. And this is mainly because it only looks at the emissions that come from landfill and from incineration, which are the last stages in the waste. So basically from a landfill, you have that if what goes to landfill contains organic matter rottens, it produces methane. This methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas that has a really significant impact on climate change. This is a very important source of greenhouse gas emissions. The other source is from incineration. When we are burning materials, any type of waste, it produces a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, also toxic pollution, dioxins, furans, etc. A lot of the incinerators nowadays also produce electricity, but we can, and just to explain the text box that is there, per unit of electricity, an incinerator produces a lot more carbon dioxide than even a coal plant. So it's a very climate unfriendly, a very carbon intensive source of energy. But basically these are the two sources that mainly are taken into account when we look at what are the greenhouse gas emissions that come from waste. But this is only the tip of the iceberg, because if you think of what is waste? What is waste? Waste is actually products. Products have a whole life cycle. So products that have been extracted, have been produced, have been distributed, have been consumed, and finally are disposed. And this is this report from 2009 from the US, where it actually looks at the provision of products and food and how much greenhouse gas emissions are embedded in the products when we look at all this life cycle. And in this case, it was coming up to 42%. This is to illustrate how much of a bigger picture we get and how much of a bigger opportunity we have in dealing with waste to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions when we look at the whole life cycle of products. In 2015, in the context of the Paris COP, we produced, together with Eunomia, a British consulting company here in the UK, this report that I invite you all to read, The Potential Contribution of Waste Management to a Low Carbon Economy. And here we gave like a more detailed estimate of how the emissions that you can save from waste prevention and from recycling in comparison especially to the residual waste treatment, to incineration and to landfill. And it's absolutely huge. So what we see is that when we're looking to the zero waste hierarchy, and the zero waste hierarchy is this criteria that gives us guidance on to what is the worst and best waste management treatment. We have that in the upper layers of the hierarchy, the refuse, redesign is where we have the biggest gains the biggest savings of greenhouse gas emissions. So basically, a zero waste circular economy is definitely an opportunity, a big opportunity to guide climate change mitigation. And we, our recommendation and our advocacy has been very much pushing towards both for waste management to really recognize, to be aligned with the needs for climate change mitigation and to always prioritize the upper layers of the waste hierarchy, as well as for climate change mitigation to be pushing a lot more for these upper layers of the waste hierarchy and not for the lower, not for waste incineration and not for landfill, which should not be prioritized. So this is to bring this, to explain zero waste, circular economy, how does it link to climate change? And now let's look at how does it work in the practice. So as I was saying, we've been working with zero waste cities all over Europe. These cities, which, I invite you all to go to the website. There's lots of resources and webinars, and it's a really, really interesting, really rich website that, that hopefully will be very interesting for you. All these cities basically are in different levels, different stages of their journey towards zero waste. But what defines them all is that they are committed to continually make an effort to reduce the waste. At the moment, there's 28 members in 24 countries in the, in the Zero Waste Europe network that gives advice to these 400 municipalities. And there is expertise about separate collection, reuse centers, pay as you throw, some of the things I'm going to explain now. So basically it's a really vibrant network sharing expertise about how to make zero waste a practical reality. There's 4 principles I'm going to talk about, 4 big legs that zero waste in practice would look at. In the first place, we look at changing the infrastructure for the maximization of materials recovery. This is kind of the more actual hands-on waste management type of thing. So basically what we see from the cities, and when I say cities, I mean also towns, I mean villages. I know that in English there is these cities, a particular type of municipality, sorry. So when we say cities, we mean like municipalities of different shapes and sizes and so on. So, but what we've seen in the municipalities that are at the front, like giving the best results, and this is the example here is Capanori, who is the very first one, the very first municipality in Europe that declared a zero waste goal. And they implemented the system in which, as you can see, in about a bit less than 10 years, they reduced almost 40% of their waste, and they reached more than 80% of separately collected waste. And nowadays it's even higher. Basically, we've been looking at all these municipalities and how did they manage their best results, and seeing that source separation of waste and door-to-door collection still remain like the two ways that really there is a very reliable maximization of material recovery, because this is how you get like really clean streams of waste, instead of versus what would be like that it gets mixed and then it gets separated in another facility. It's a lot better to have it separated at source and do door-to-door collection. Another very important thing is about the organic waste. So the organic waste is this waste stream that is really important, especially for climate change, since, as I was saying before, this is where the methane emissions come from. But also, if we manage to have a clean organic waste stream, we can compost it and recover it, and that is another input to healthy agricultural systems. So this is also a really nice example of how we can close the loop. So this is instead of instead of going to landfill or to an incinerator, making sure that this organic waste can return to the soil, increases the carbon sequestration potential of the soil, allows the reducing the use of chemical fertilizers as well, because it can be used as fertilizer for the soil, which also reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So yeah, so this is also a very good point. An economical tool that maximizes recovery is pay as you throw. Pay as you throw is an economical incentive. It's a principle that many of these zero waste cities have applied, in which the principle is basically that you pay your taxes for the waste service according to how much waste you produce. And it's the same principle that we use for our electricity bill or our water bill. The more that we consume, the more that we pay. But interestingly, in the case of waste, it doesn't always happen like that. And many times it's just a flat rate what you pay. And if you produce a lot of waste, or if you don't produce waste and you have composting at home and you are super careful with how much plastic you produce, nothing, most of the time it's not going to impact your bill. What we have seen in the zero waste cities that have best results is that applying a pay as you throw gives an economic incentive to do the good thing. This is the case of Contarina, also in Italy, but there's cases, and it will vary how it's been implemented. So, this is in Contarina, but it's, the detail may be different in different places, but basically there's a fixed fee for everyone to have the system. But then if you are doing composting at home, for example, you get a bonus. Or if you have less residual waste, and it makes sense because you are actually saving money to the council if you are putting less waste in there. I do community composting where I live, but the council doesn't give me any benefit from the waste that I'm not giving them to treat. Anyway, this is something that really works. Oops, sorry. The other tool that I want to mention is that this deposit return scheme as well, another economic incentive. This has had perhaps a bigger, in the UK, it's been now in Scotland, I think it's going to be implemented definitely. There's examples like in Germany, in places where this is like completely mainstream, up and running. Again, you take, you give a fee for taking the beverage, the bottle, the whatever container, and then you get that back when you return it to the right place. Thinking that, bottles, beverages, all these things are actually the number one thing that we find that it's littered in the environment. And as well, all these containers are super easy to recycle: plastic, PET, aluminium. It's definitely, this is a really significant leakage from a circular economy, and something that could be like really taken back. Just to mention that we are looking at the global south as well. My colleagues in the Gaia office in Philippines and the network in Asia, for example, are really working in the development of the zero waste cities in Asia. This is the case of San Fernando City in Philippines. This was the picture it says before, it was like an open dam, really sad place. And it was thanks to the Mother Earth Foundation, the Gaia member that works there with the council, created this eco park and implemented a whole zero waste system with door-to-door collection and so on. In this case, working with the waste pickers, the informal recyclers that are doing most of the work in the global south, managed to really put the nice and a lot nicer place, and with results, as it explains here, much higher reuse, recycle and composted, a lot better working conditions and living wages for the waste pickers, and actually a lot less cost for the council. We have case study around this, so there's more detail that could be there. Again, this is a program that it's growing in Asia, and I can share as well the link to all the case studies of all the zero waste cities that are currently thriving in Asia. So that was the infrastructure. Let's look at redesign and phase out of products. So we have products in our production and life and consumption life that really cannot be recycled, cannot be reused. We call that bad design. In these pictures here are from Capanory. This is the people there, our zero waste experts there, looking at what are the leftovers of zero waste. When you have recycled everything, when you have reused everything, what's left? What's this 10, 20% of things? And we need to look at them to see like, okay, these are the things that we cannot do anything else about it, rather than, other than redesign them or phase them out. We have seen, especially looking at plastic, that recycling is not enough. And if we look at the projections of plastic production, we see that we can increase the recycling, but if we don't reduce the production of plastic products in itself, we it's going to be very difficult to really achieve a zero waste circular economy. And where we have a big opportunity is where we see all these single-use plastic products that really need to be, as we say, redesigned or phased out. In the EU, there is a really interesting initiative at the moment with the single-use directive. It's going to ban a number of single-use products. We celebrate this advance in the European policy. There's still a lot of debate in, the definition of plastic, and it's not the legislation is not done yet, but it's definitely going in the right direction. And we need to really give support to the reusable solutions and make sure that all the products that we make are as repairable, as reusable as possible. The third leg is the development of communities and local economies. So this is a study from 2011, which is some years ago already. Now we are actually working on the updating all of this data. So very soon we'll be able to share an update of this, which may change slightly, but basically the principle, I think, that stays the same. We are basically, when we are looking at waste, it's not only that we get lower greenhouse gas emissions, but actually there's a massive potential in terms of jobs and in terms of local economies that thrive a lot more. And these in the local, in the global south, it's even more important, given that, as I was saying before, in the global south, the recycling system is by de facto in the informal economy. In most of the cities in the global south, you will see that it is the urban poor that are retrieving the materials from the waste and are really making sure that the materials are recovered. So in the places, this is a very vulnerable community, but in the places where they've had the appropriate support, they've been able to organize themselves. They are cooperatives that are thriving and really empowering the communities at the local level. This is the cooperatives of waste pickers actually is the community that I started working with when I started in Gaia in 2010. And I led a delegation of waste pickers going to the climate negotiations to raise their voices and for them to be heard on how the climate policies were impacting their work. And I have to say, I've been always, ever most inspired by the strength and the expertise of the waste speakers and how much they know about the waste and what can be done. So very important to take them into account. Finally, last leg, phasing out incinerators and landfills. So incinerators and landfills are the last disposal stage, especially for waste to energy incineration. There's an air pollution problem with dioxins and furans where things are burnt. But also very important is the lock-in effect. So basically, when you have a municipality, a government, whatever authority has invested massive amount of money in creating a big infrastructure that's gonna tide the system for 30 years, this is inflexible in the way that you're gonna commit your waste to be feeding this infrastructure, to be producing, you know, wherever energy is producing. But basically, you're not gonna be able to implement any waste reduction policy. So in most of the cases in the UK, this is what we see, but this is a general situation. It creates this vacuum cleaner effect, which is that incinerators are supposed to only deal with the residual waste, but they end up burning anything and a lot of the recyclable materials. So it's definitely a really important leakage in the circular economy. We are seeing in the European Union a divestment from incineration, or at least a trend that is moving away from waste to energy incineration. It was very important in 2018 when the revision of the renewable energy took out the financial incentives to consider mixed waste as a source of renewable energy. So that was really important and a really positive steps, as until then, waste to energy incineration had been benefited a lot from subsidies from renewable energy. Also very important has been the taxonomy report in the world of sustainable finance in the last year. That is the European Union's criteria to define what are the financial projects that deserve to be considered sustainable. And that is sustainable as in they are contributing to climate change mitigation and contributing to circular economy and environmental objectives. They excluded waste to energy incineration from these criteria. And also the European Investment Bank has published its circular economy guide and also has excluded the incineration because it damages the circular economy. So this is to say that also, you know, important financial and institutional trends that are happening now. In practice, this has translated from, for example, the European Investment Bank from taking away the finance that they were going to give to the waste incineration in Belgrade, which was a very controversial project that's been contested by the local organizations and supported by European networks like Bankwatch, precisely not only because, you know, they don't like it, but for the specific reason that an incinerator is going to damage the environmental goals. So I just want to add a few current hotspots, like a few points about our work. And as I was saying, I think in Europe, what we see is that the waste incineration is, especially in the Northern Europe, we see that there is a situation of overcapacity. So these are countries that have invested a lot in incineration, and at the moment they just don't know how to go back. And I mean, they're, you know, they're doing things to solve the situation, but basically they realize that they have more incineration capacity than waste to burn, and that now this is an obstacle to reach a circular economy. And what is the incineration industry response is that they are looking to the markets in the global south. So our colleagues in the global south are really receiving a lot of pressure from incineration industry trying to really sell this toxic technology in the global south. We have also the cement industry, very interested in the burning waste. They call it alternative fuel, and they say that, you know, using waste instead of coal or instead of other fossil fuels, it's very good for the climate. It's part of their climate strategy. This is has an impact on public health, and definitely, of course, is not a climate mitigation strategy. This is a whole greenwash strategy of the industry, but this is definitely an open front that it's an emerging trend that we are seeing in many places. And of course, as I was saying, the sustainable finance is definitely a really interesting and thriving and emerging space of work where there is, especially now in the context of COVID, there is more and more interest in the recovery funds and looking at where actually we want to put the money. And this is something that I am actually particularly interested in following at the moment. The waste shipments as well. I saw someone from Malaysia, and this is, you will have seen in the news how more and more the European countries have been put in the spotlight for exporting illegal waste that should not be taken to the global south, especially to Asia, and then it's been kind of opened and revealed how weak are the recycling systems in Europe. So again, this is a very hot spot at the moment, both for the countries in the global south to stop these exports, as well an opportunity for Europe to make it better. And we have a network with all the cities, young activists working, winning prizes. This is our ally in Baltimore, winning the Goldman Prize, and practices all over the world. Zero waste is international, is becoming global, and it is impressive and inspiring to see how it works everywhere. And as well, how this has had an impact with the zero waste lifestyle, which is becoming more and more popular, and how we, it's lovely as well to see, how many people are really taking on the actual changing habits in their lives and reducing waste and not using plastic and so on. And more we have seen how the zero waste celebrities have gained international light. So yeah, it's from when I started in 2010 till now, it's definitely been a really exciting journey to see how the movement has grown. And we look forward to keep it growing and keep it going. So I think this is gonna be me for now. Thank you very much. I've seen some long questions in the chat, and yeah, so I'm very happy about this. I'm sorry I have not been able to read any of it, but I look forward to the debate. So thank you very much to all.
Thank you so much, Mariel. That was great. I'm really happy with that presentation, that talk. I definitely learned a lot. And yes, thank you so much, everyone, for engaging so much, both in the chat and the Q&A. I love that you reply to each other, engage with each other, share resources. I think conversations are a great way to change the world. So thank you so much about all that. I'm now going to take questions. So the way that's going to work is I am going to look through the Q&A chat. I will enable you to actually talk instead of reading out your question. So of course you do not have to talk. How it's going to happen is I'm going to say a name. For example, the first question will be Susan Evans. So Susan, if you are happy to, we will enable you to talk. If you're not happy to talk, just say nothing and I will read out your question. Go ahead. Oh, no worries. I will read out the question then. So Susan is asking about the social equity implications and other unwanted side effects of a pay-as-you-throw system. She's concerned it would undermine the principle of universal services for all citizens, regardless of ability to pay. Many of the cheapest food are quite high in packaging, and people working 2 jobs or with difficult caring responsibilities may struggle to do the type of cooking that minimizes waste, so they could be penalized. In addition, we already have a significant problem with fly tipping, which could be worsened. Are there ways to address these issues in designing a pay-as-you-throw scheme, or is it fairer to put the onus on producers rather than consumers? Thanks. Mariel, do you want to go with that?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely I would say that in the places where they have implemented the pay-as-you-throw system, they would have looked at that and make sure that this is, that they have will taken into account the sociology, the demographics that they have in their place. And I would hope that, they ensure that everyone is able to pay the basic fees and that it's not, the universal service is not undermined. I also would say that it's not just implementing an instrument and that's it. This comes with, ideally, it comes with a participatory processes where people are consulted. So in this case, like the reality and the needs and the specific circumstances of people can be taken into account. It comes with an important communication strategy where people are able to see, understand, learn, and more importantly, are given the support to make those changes. So, for example, I can imagine having a scheme that promotes reusable nappies, for example, in a place if you want to reduce the residual waste that comes with the nappies, for example. So having a scheme where there would be support of some sort, either like you give the nappies or maybe there is a laundrette that can actually, it's not going to be, I don't think we would never recommend just apply a pay-as-you-throw system, without thinking about who is going to actually implement that. We would really, and just this measure and nothing else, you would really have to make a whole plan and make sure that, it really works for the people that have to use it.
All right, thank you very much. Eric, will you go next?
Yes, thank you very much, Maria, for the lovely answer. And we're going to continue with Sanjeev V. I'm going to allow you to talk now. Please let us know if you want to read out your question.
You can
unmute yourself.
Read out my question.
Okay.
All right, I will read it out. So Sangeet's question is, could you reflect on how increasing inequality and associated phenomena such as gentrification, luxury consumption, changes the nature of waste and how it impacts the circularity of the economy?
Very high level question, and it's interesting to see. I think with waste, we can see, so essentially, if you think of the, just to put it into an actual context, that geographical context, because really in the end waste is like materials. If you see like what the rich countries and the in the developing countries, the tendency when there is an increase of the middle class and so on is to, yes, there is an increase in plastic, there is an increase in the material use. So what we see is that an increase of the economy, essentially an increase in consumption, it will increase in the production of waste. And the challenge here basically is how you decouple that. How can you achieve that there is an increase of the quality of life and an increase of the, let's say, achieving that there is no poverty, that people have the means to live properly, without necessarily an increase of waste. And there are places like Taiwan, for example, and we have a case study of that, where they managed to do that. So it's not, I think, this would be the mainstream. We can assume, and this I think is basically what all the projections of the the World Bank or the UNEP are looking at big projections where we just project that the waste will increase because population will increase, because economy will increase, because this is the assumption. But it doesn't have to be like this. It really doesn't have to be like this. And this is, precisely with zero waste, circular economy principles, we could definitely decouple that. So, hopefully we could reverse the trend.
Yeah, hopefully, indeed. Next, Natalie Bo Bolso, sorry if I butcher your name. Would you like to, I will allow you to unmute, and if you'd like to ask your question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, first of all, for this really interesting talk. I feel like I learned a lot. And I had a question on like cap and trade programs, like in the life cycle of products, because obviously it can create incentives for firms to become more green in a way. But these cap and trade programs can also lead to environmental justice issues, as like pollution hotspots can arise. So I was really curious to hear your viewpoint on this, and maybe discuss how these like cap and trade programs can be implemented to have a positive impact. So yeah, thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you for your question. So I'm not sure I'm aware of cap and trade programs applied to life cycle of products. Cap and trade, what I understand, cap and trade is like the European Union emissions cap and trade system, or the clean development mechanism, like the whole idea of carbon offsets and how, yeah, the market for trading of greenhouse gas emissions. So just taking it from there, and sorry if I'm missing a bit your point. I have actually been working a lot many years ago on the cap and trade system in Europe and the clean development mechanism, which was the international carbon offset mechanism created by the UN, by the UNFCCC. Essentially, you know, that was a system that in practice, in theory, was going to incentivize the companies to reduce emissions. In practice, it really hasn't worked at all. In Europe, it became like, it just gave massive profits to companies that are polluting, to the major polluters in Europe. In the international level, it was just you know, a really painful space for violation of human environmental rights. So I at the moment, the interesting thing perhaps to mention is that waste to energy incineration has not been part of the EU ETS, the EU emission trading scheme, despite incineration produces energy, so they should be inside. And but it's possible it's going to change, and incineration is going to be part of the EU ETS. I'm sorry if you know, I'm sorry if I have not really answered your question. Maybe we can continue this conversation later.
If you have a follow-up question, you may follow up with a question. And if not, I will go on to the next question. Mm-hmm. Yep, I will do that. All right, Katrina Hayworth. Oh, hi. Would you like to go next? I will enable you to talk now.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Hi, thank you for your talk. That was really good. Yeah, I think the zero waste movement is like extremely commendable, and I think we can all try to reduce as much as we can. But it strikes me as those of us who can reduce our waste like significantly are quite privileged relatively in terms of like time, resources, or like our own energy that we can put into educating ourselves and that kind of thing. And I wonder whether it's better or like, you know, a less painful road to zero waste if we change the responsibility from consumers back onto producers, who are like the source of a lot of very wasteful production, and whether it's possible to increase regulation or even like economic incentives directly on the producers instead.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I'm sorry if this wasn't clear in my talk, because this is at the heart of our work. Of course, zero waste, in the end, it comes down to cities, it comes down to systems, but we completely see it as a matter of justice. And justice means that precisely it is the producers of the waste that need to stop it in the first place. So this is very much our policy work. Is very much directed to limiting and making sure that the policies put limits onto the production of waste. That the product policy is making sure that we are producing the product. So absolutely, like, we're looking at the upstream side of things. Of course, the zero waste movement in itself, or perhaps what comes across more in a more popular way, is the zero waste lifestyle and all that. But especially, I would say, in the plastic campaign, in the Break Free from Plastic movement, there is a whole specific strategy looking at corporations and producers. And there's been really interesting initiatives like with brand audits. So there's been in India and in the Philippines, they've done like really massive audits of what is the waste that is in the beaches, like littered. And they've identified what are the companies at the top producers of this waste in the world, these being Unilever, Coca-Cola, like no surprises, but still important to say who they are. And there's been a really important campaign going after them and engaging them. So in some cases, like for example in Capanori, as I was saying, when they found that one of the most problematic products they had in the waste stream was the coffee capsules, and they went back to Lavazza, the producer, and engaged with them and really had this very constructive dialogue in which eventually Lavazza changed the design and it started doing the coffee capsules in a compostable way. So there's been, from this kind of small or, small successful stories to a massive, to a much bigger campaign, definitely very important. And very important, this point that you mentioned about, not in the end, not penalizing people and understanding that yeah, it's not always possible to do the zero waste thing. I would say that, not the zero waste that we advocate, it shouldn't be more expensive. It shouldn't be, this is not a consumerist strategy. This is not hopefully we can adapt it and make it possible for everyone.
Thank you very much. Catriona, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, that was really a great answer and like good examples. Is there anything that any one or two biggest things that we can do as consumers or citizens to help these zero waste movements in a meaningful way, like writing to MPs or the supermarkets, or what would you recommend? Cool.
I mean, where you are, have a look around you, see what organizations are working on, on the topics. There may be, there may be organizations from the Break Free from Plastic movement, from Gaia, from Zero Waste, or maybe other organizations that are active, and join them and take on the campaigns that are happening where you live. If you prefer more online, international, get onto the website, subscribe. There's actions as well online, more like social media type of thing. So there's plenty. So it really depends where you are, what you want. Really, I'm sure that there's going to be something that you can do.
And if there's no local branch of Zero Waste, just create one and start rotating. All right, thank you so much, Catriona, for your questions. I think next we'll go on to Nick Foster. Nick, I will now unmute you. There you go. All right, we'll ask the question then. Nick is asking, does pay as you throw increase fly tipping levels? And Marjorie is adding, or does it decrease if citizens get reward for recycling? Do you have any insights of situations where either of these circumstances happened?
Yeah, I cannot see the question, but anyway, pay as you throw, does it increase fly tipping? Yes, there's been cases. I remember in Catalonia, that was a situation that happened in one place when addressing when implemented the zero waste, the whole strategy, and there was a case of fly tipping. I think the key is, as I was saying before, I think as with zero waste, and I believe like with any social change, transformation spaces, I think we need to take into account people, like change has to be bottom up. You cannot just land on a community and just do changes thinking that, without taking them into account. That wouldn't be something that we recommend. There has to be a participatory process. You need to make sure that people are on board, and the system needs to be designed taking into account the reality of that community, which will have always a specific circumstances that will require a specific adaptations for making sure that it works for them. So pay as you throw it's a principle. It's an economic principle that works in most of cases. But of course, again, it's not the tool that you will just implement on its own without telling, without really explaining or consulting anyone. You really want that, and this is really the opportunity that you have to empower the community in itself for them to take the ownership as well of the whole system in itself. So it's not only, it's important in terms of the, there's this added value about making sure that we grow in our democratics, in our community, developing the community in itself. So if I would think that the places where there was fly tipping is because maybe some of these things have not been working so well. And I would say maybe we need to consult again, and maybe we need to see why is the fly tipping happening, and maybe there's something in the system that we have implemented that it's not good enough. But it definitely wouldn't be something that for me would question the tool itself.
Thank you so much. And so it was the same question that someone engaged in the comments in the thread.
Okay.
Asking, does the pay as you throw scheme actually, does it decrease if citizens get reward for recycling? Has this been implemented anywhere? Citizens getting rewards, for recycling, for separating the source of waste?
So the example in Contarina is basically you pay less. It's not that you get paid if you do it well, it's that you pay less. And everyone pays a fee, a fixed fee that ensures that the whole system works and is sustainable. But basically, there's a variable fee that according to how much residual waste you produce and whether you make community composting or not, you will have more or less. And if you saw in the visual, this is a smaller part of the total bill. So there's a 60% that it's fixed, and it's a 40% that kind of moves about. Perhaps a more simple, clear example in the Basque Country. In this case, it was a small village, but basically they implemented community composting spaces. If you would engage with this and you would make sure that your organic waste goes to the community composting, you have a 40% reduction on your council bill. So it's not that you have a bonification if you recycle, but this could be kind of the mechanics, or kind of the detail about the implementation, which I would recommend to go to the zero waste case studies that are in our website. And you don't even need to enter into the whole PDF. I think in the front there is like a nice summary where you can see where it has worked and what results they get. So quickly you can identify which municipalities did it and how. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. The next question would go to Dorothea Kubiak. Would you like to answer that yourself? Dorothea?
Eric, would you mind reading the question, please?
Of course. So Dorothy asked, can we really have zero waste? Is zero achievable? What about hazardous waste, such as hospital waste?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, can we really have zero waste? Yes, we can. We definitely have a long way to go. But yes, if, you know, if in the places where they have managed to have 80%, 90% of separately collected waste, they have a 10% that is this waste, that is the products that cannot be recycled. But if they can be redesigned, if we can transform the service or the product, turn it into a service, whatever, definitely it's possible. Or at least for us, I think the important is, you know, the journey. It's not so much, you know, the important is to keep going. The important is to keep transforming the system to go to this aim that is zero. Of course, there are types of ways that it will be more difficult to get rid of. And for those, we have a whole, you know, we have a whole strategy to what do we do with the waste until we cannot get rid of it. And there's, we have just published a report explaining how, you know, from the more technical, mechanical point of view, we could, via something that's called MRBT. It's kind of a more technical discussion, but basically, yes, it's true that there may be some ways that it's going to be more difficult to get rid of. And yet there are ways, or we would advocate for ways that are, you know, that are not burning or are not burning. Hazardous waste, actually, and now with the whole COVID situation, has been, again, put in the spotlight. So in the context of COVID, the incineration and the plastic industry have been pushing very much the idea that plastic is safe and that we need to burn it all because this is the cleanest way of dealing with it. This is not the first hazardous waste that we have with COVID. Like, hazardous waste exists, infectious waste exists before. And already from the WHO and the UNEP, we have recommendations for systems that do not require incineration of the infectious waste. And I would recommend going to the network of Healthcare Without Harm. This is a sister network that is dealing with ensuring that the healthcare sector is as environmental and climate friendly as possible. And they have a whole big area of work dealing with hazardous waste and a whole network of green hospitals. They call it healthy and green hospitals. These are, it would be the equivalent to the zero waste cities, but with the hospitals, and having very successful experiences of hospitals that have used alternative ways of treatment of the hazardous waste, infectious waste, other than incineration. So yeah, this is it.
That's great, thank you. I love that you're also mentioning all other organizations. It's great to know that there's a whole movement and many organizations working grassroots to actually achieve things. Next, I think I will give the floor to Olaf. Olaf, you may now unmute yourself.
Thank you, Lena. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
And thank you, Mariel, for an excellent presentation, and congratulations on your excellent work in the Zero Waste Europe group. Really inspiring. I had two very sort of down-to-earth questions on the specific policy proposals you had. On one of them on the pay-as-you-throw fee, which we discussed quite at length already. But I actually just wanted to mention briefly first some research from my supervisor at the Norwegian University, who pointed to the fact that economic incentives could actually sometimes reduce moral motivation for recycling or sorting your waste, and it could sometimes lead to being able to buy yourself out of the moral dilemma of having waste. But that was just one field work at a Norwegian town that tried this out. But another question was kind of on incineration, and it could be related to the pay-as-you-throw thing, where you look rather than at the tonnage or amount of waste, but you look at the carbon released from burning your waste. So potentially you could implement a fee that estimates the amount of carbon that is emitted from your waste, and you use that fee to fund some sort of carbon capture at the incineration. Is this something you have considered?
So everything I know about the carbon capture and storage is that it's very popular amongst let me say it's kind of a very techno-enthusiastic vision of solutions to climate change, in the sense that, and it's being proposed by precisely like the cement industry or other industries that really you know, rather than changing their production systems, are trying to do something with the carbon that they produce. And what we and as far as we know, carbon capture and storage is not really, it is not a solid technology that's been proven good or that's proven, you know, successful. So it's for me kind of, it's more in the it's not a systemic change. It's more in the sense of like it's an unproven technology that would not really change the root causes of the climate crisis that we are facing. In this sense, it's not a, for us, it would not be a solution that we would prioritize in a circular economy or zero waste system. Precisely because, you know, when you have an incinerator, it's not only the carbon that is produced, it's precisely because the fact that you have a massive infrastructure that can burn the waste, it will be enabling a linear economy. It's not only enabling, it will be incentivizing a linear economy, because it will be incentivizing the system that is based on the exploitation of resources, overconsumption, production, and it will be requiring to be fed. So if anything, carbon capture and storage will be just contributing to hide the systemic failure of how exploitative this system is. So definitely not something that we would contribute, that we would advocate. Having said that, applying a fee to households according to the CO2 that we produce, yes, this is the discussion about, should we have a carbon tax? And we could think that we could apply that to the households. It's not something that we are working on, but systemically, it would be a way to make visible, to internalize something that now is externalized onto the environment and damaging the common, our commons, as it is the climate, it's our commons. And of course, I would, you know, we will have to make sure that it's not only the households, that it's also the corporations, etc., etc. So that's a whole other discussion, but the principle of it, that we take responsibility for what we use, as in what we use of our commons, environmental commons, and that we all understand that and are aware that we all are part of this carbon footprint. Definitely that's something that I would find very interesting.
Thank you. And I think actually the next question is very much in line with that. So maybe you can go into further in depth on that. Charles Saint-Pierre, I'm gonna now, that's a name I can pronounce. I'm gonna allow you to talk. Would you like to ask your question?
Sure, as would be the French pronunciation. Wait a minute, I lost it on my. I'm sorry, I lost the question. But anyways,
I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I lost the. Oh, here we go. Has there been any discussion of a waste added tax, like of that tax, assessed at every step of production, and whether it should include the thermodynamic minimum of waste production as a baseline. Did you get that?
Can you repeat? Do you mind? Has there been any cap on the production of waste? Sorry.
So the question was, has there been any discussion of a waste tax, like a VAT tax assessed at every step of the production?
Oh, I see. Not that I'm aware. Not that I'm aware. So, that's interesting. So, this would be kind of waste prevention targets, or ensuring that there is that waste is not produced in the first place. This is the this would be our priority, to make sure that there are economic instruments and policies that incentivize the no creation of waste in the first place. It's the most difficult as well, in the sense that so far what the policies have tended towards is more to have a recycling target. In the latest circular economy package of the European policy, there are targets for separate collection of the waste. There are targets for for the recycling of packaging. But, for example, there is no target for waste prevention. And there's going to be a revision now of the legislation that it will precisely look into this, in the, how do we have a waste prevention target? So maybe that's something that will come up. And what you are saying, it's probably would be interesting to look into it in this context of, like, okay, how do we achieve the actual waste prevention in the first place? But in terms of the VAT and all that, I'm not aware. I'm not aware of it. But maybe I don't know. That's also possible that I just don't know about it.
I have a follow-up on that, actually, on that question. I feel like taxes in the line of waste added tax just encourage even more discrimination. It just encourage inequalities even more, because it will be the big corporations that already have the money that will just be able to continue producing waste, while it risks weighing down the smaller companies. So would it not be, granted, much more difficult to implement, but would it not be more fair to simply forbid waste and somehow have a punishment system or something that is not as unfair?
I would think that any taxation system shouldn't just, be applied as a, as a bottom line fixed rule for everyone the same. And it would have to be, it's different in a household than in a company, it's different small shop than a big corporation. So I would go back to the principle, and the principle is that it just doesn't make sense that, all of, at the level of households, we all pay the same, never mind how much waste we produce. So we are costing the council different amount of money, but that is not reflected in our bill. So it's really not realistic. It just doesn't reflect the reality, and it's not fair, really. I see that as a really unfair situation, in which, someone were maybe, making a lot of effort, and that will not be, yes, and others not. That said, of course, I think for me the other thing is that there has to be a service that needs to be guaranteed no matter what. So of course there is a principle of equity that needs to be respected, in very much so, and that a taxation system should not be at the cost, or at the expense of an increase of injustice or increase of poverty. I think that would be really, really counterproductive.
Yes, of course, makes sense. Looking at the time, are you happy to take 1 or 2 more questions?
Yes, sorry, I don't know what time it is. Oh, yes, fine.
All right, Henrik, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. Should we ask the comment as well?
We can go for Malik's question, for example. Malik, would you like to, I will now enable you. There you go. You can unmute.
Cool, thank you. So thank you for the presentation and for the moderation. I was just wondering, given that different cities will have different environmental and social and economic dynamics at play, what are some noticeable patterns in different cities that are more easily able to adopt zero waste schemes? Because I'm guessing there's different potential in different cities. So I'm just wondering, like in my city of Johannesburg, whether I can notice any of these patterns.
Cool. By the way, sorry, I was going to say, but Johannesburg, there's a really big Gaia member in South Africa that's Grand Work, is Friends of the Earth South Africa. They're based in Dunbar. Yeah, so just to mention that, you know, in South Africa, there's this organization doing really good work on waste and other social environmental justice issues. So cities that are doing zero waste, interestingly, the one thing that I see is the political context. So the political opportunity that is created by, for example, a change of government. So we have Parma, for example, or Capanori, or Barcelona, or Kiel in Germany, places where basically there's been a change of government. There's been, in this case, linked to this, in some cases linked to the municipalities movement. So, you know, this, you may be aware some years ago, like some political parties created from grassroots initiatives that kind of bring politicians that don't come with a political career, but come from a more grassroots activist background, and that have the political will to do significant radical changes in the way that the city is working. And if any trend, I would say that you know, some of the cities, essentially some of the cities where there is a change in the elite of the political system, have an opportunity to, or are freer from perhaps loyalties, alliances with the industrial elite that normally control the contracts for the waste management. Like, bear in mind that the waste management industry is in the end, you know, a number of corporations that have very strong contracts with these cities, and is precisely the cities that are able to cut these ties with the industry that are able to go beyond. So we have the Basque Country, for example, where there was like this really strong grassroots movement that made, you know, 20, 30 something municipalities going zero waste, and it was precisely because they were not tied to the corporations, to the industry. So it's definitely the social pressure, the grassroots movements that are either able from just from a grassroots, or more from activists from outside the municipality, or managing from inside to change the contracts. And we have places like Bogota as well, where it's been the really intense work from the cooperatives of waste pickers that have managed at the political and legal level, like going to the courts and challenging the decisions by the municipalities, that they have managed to win the contracts for the waste management in the city. So I would say social pressure movements, grassroots, just from the grassroots, are really managing to win elections and be in the government. That's definitely been, you know, something that really can make a big difference.
Thank you so much. Before I forget, someone in this chat asked, could you please post the name of the person in the group you just mentioned in South Africa? So I think the group was Friends of the Earth. Could you please type in the chat?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and we're going to continue with John. John, would you like to ask the question yourself?
You mean me? I guess you mean me. Yeah. Okay. So actually, I had two questions, and I'll bring them together, and I'll change the order. Mariel, thanks so much for your input. It's very good. I mean, it's very precise, and you're very brilliant. So thank you. So the first question, really, and this is the important one. When you showed your diagram of like the zero waste economy versus the recycling economy, you added things like reuse and repair and so forth. When you look at reuse and repair models, there aren't really very many of them these days, not really compared to waste and recycling, but there is a problem in terms of the overall energy balance sometimes. So for example, if you have a sharing system where people are sending a power drill around the town or around the country, quite quickly you get to the situation where you're using more energy over the total lifetime of the drill to reuse it and repair it and share it than you are to just make a new one and keep it in the cupboard. So I wonder what you think about that, the balancing of overall impacts between what feel like sort of zero waste models like sharing and what actually for a very efficient production system could be more efficient just to make it and then take it back, right?
Yeah, so the question with LCA methodologies is what actually do you take into account? And the complication here is that not everyone looks at LCA from the same point of view or really looking at the whole LCA. So when you know, I mean, I'm not familiar with this particular case in the power drill, but basically, if you think of the plastic that's been in the power drill, has the LCA that in this case was used, did they take into account all the impacts from the creation of, the extraction of the fossil fuel, the actual doing of the plastic, the actual, you know what I mean? It's like how much of the life cycle of the manufacturing of the power drill was taken into account, even if it was done in a very efficient factory. Was it made into account? For, it doesn't mean that there may be things that really is like a lot easier to do it more, but really thinking that we are in a planet with finite products where we really need to stop or reduce very significantly the level, the amount of production and use of natural resources. It would be, it is, I don't see how really we could advocate for just more production and instead of sharing. So I would be cautious. It doesn't mean that, this particular case, there is something that actually it's true that, the energy balance doesn't work, but as a principle, I would say that we just need to really limit the production and the use of natural resources and reuse and repair of first systems that maybe you need to think that they have to be very localized. Of course, like if you start sharing a power drill and you have to transport the power drill with a car that uses gas, then, I mean, of course, like maybe that really doesn't work. But if we think of a library of tools for a neighborhood where people walk from house, we just need to walk the next street and get the power drill, and that serves 20 or 30 houses, I think definitely, I would think that is definitely more environmental and more energy cost effective.
Yeah, so just to follow up quickly, I don't think there's a kind of finite answer here, so there's no need for you to kind of, I don't think there's a fixed answer, but the point is this, is that what you just described is precisely the problem, is that sharing systems end up having all these kind of hidden inefficiencies, like the car journey and the wrapping and the, the unnecessary breakage and so forth. And And so having studied those things, the sharing systems like Zilog and Ecomodo, that all fell apart, right? These were the tool libraries of the future, and they didn't work. And one of the reasons was they were just very inefficient. They were too expensive to do the sharing. And so it's kind of a question, but it's for broader consideration, is that what the guys that proposed, cradle to cradle originally suggested was that what they call eco-effectiveness was a good strategy, whereby if you have very efficient take back and very efficient reproduction, it's actually in your diagram, so it's not to exclude it from your analysis, but you can get to a situation where if you produce efficient, you take back efficiently, you close the technical and biotic loops of materials, that is more efficient and lower impact than sharing systems that end up having wrapping paper and car journeys and breakage and just unnecessary but hidden impacts. And so it's basically balancing efficient technical production take back versus sharing systems. I mean, I spent a lot of time on policy and research in sharing systems, and they aren't that good.
Yeah, it'd be good to talk specifically, like what I don't think statements like sharing systems, like as they are like one thing and all the same, would be really accurate to say that it just doesn't work at all. I mean, definitely, I would say there's plenty of good experiences and positive experience of sharing and reuse and repair stuff that have proving well. And again, I will be very careful about what actual costs, environmental, social, economical costs, have you taken into account to assess what is the cost of doing a new thing. And a sharing system that involves car journeys and packaging, maybe it's a sharing system that needs to be improved, but it doesn't mean that it's better to just do a new thing all the time.
All right, thank you so much, Mariel, for taking the time to answer these many questions. I'm afraid that we're a bit short on time right now, so we will wrap up this session. So, Mariel, thank you so much again for taking the time. I think we've gained a lot of insights into this zero waste circular economy scenario that you presented to us. So everyone, thank you so much for attending. We invite you to pursue the conversation. Eric just posted a link to our Facebook group in the chat. Feel free to continue the discussion there. Feel free to look at the work of Mariel and of Zero Waste Europe. You can find the Twitter handles there. You can find also publications on the case studies that Mariel talked about earlier. You also are welcome to attend some of the next sessions. So if you're a student today at 5 p.m. British time, we'll have a workshop on how to engage your professors and change the way they teach economics and sharing more about ideas than models. On Saturday, we'll have a session on the economics of ecosystem services, which is how to put monetary value on natural assets. On Sunday, we'll have a session on activism, which will be chaired by Eric. And also on Sunday, there is something on post-growth economics, moving away from GDP, which can be of interest if you if you're into sustainable development. There you go. So thank you very much again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at our many other sessions. Mariel, thank you so much again.
Thank you to you again.
Bye everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And have a great day.
You too.